Okay, let's kind of kick up again because I want to get these done and I want to allow time for these gentlemen to talk more than me. Get me off. So as we're getting the feedback in, it doesn't give me a count of how many people have responded, but as you can kind of start to see, what the tool is meant to do. I'm sorry. Oh, there you go. Okay, so what the tool is doing right now is it's actually measuring in the initiatives that you were thinking of, where are you in the spectrum? Again, everybody wants to run to go. I have an idea, we need a project, gotta go. It's a project, gotta initiate, right? As we can see, really only 13% of the time are we in that space. Right? This is pretty accurate, actually. Where we more often than not are is, I need to make a go, no-go decision. I need to consider whether or not we should actually even move forward at all with this right now, based on a score. I need to go take a deeper dive, and I need to take a look at a score. Right? Things in the set world are about, I have vulnerabilities to fix. So if we look at Engine, what it just did is it fed us into a spectrum that said, am I ready, right, to move forward? Data-driven, yes, no. Okay? Or it gave you a set score that said, you're past the go, no-go decision point, but you really need to take a look at, you're going to have vulnerabilities that you need to consider because they're going to affect your execution capability. Okay? And if you got the go, you're go. Do your project planning, go through life cycle, engage, and you're going to be able to meet those objectives. But the thing that I'm trying to emphasize here is that there is a spectrum, and not all projects immediately go from idea to go. They go from idea to readiness, or do we need to understand vulnerabilities, or both, or are some just really green light? And it helps filter that a little bit, so that when you're going through those conversations and you're having people come to you and saying, I need money, I need approval to move forward, you're going to want to say, well, did you run an engine? Did you run something on it? Can you give me some metric that tells me where you are? And if the answer is no, go run a metric, right? Everybody's been talking about data-driven decisions, big data, analytics. That's what this is, right? It's Moneyball. Do I need to run a readiness? If I'm beyond that point, what vulnerabilities do I need to fix? In doing this, our customers, on average, when they deal with these things, take 5-year projects down to 3 years. And the default rate goes down by 30%. Right? Year over year over year. So they start to reduce the default rate, which maximizes the dollars available. Right? So the budgets are not really stretched anymore, they're better applied because the default rate's down, implementation rate is up, value is up, I understood where to start, and I have a better spectrum for the communication process. Okay? So I'm going to, at this point, kind of abandon slides, and I'm going to go with our panel, right? So Dave Brown, recently retired Deputy Director at State Lands, and Kevin Patton. And Kevin, do you want to kick off and kind of do a little introduction? And
sure. So interested in hearing Alex's conversation here and y'all's questions too. So my background a little bit, I'm going to tell you why I'm giving you my background because, well, first, can anybody figure out where I'm from?
South Carolina.
Pardon?
South Carolina.
L.A. Lower Alabama. The north part of Florida is considered Lower Alabama. So there are far more alligators in Florida than there are people like me because I was born and raised there my entire life. And so I understand when I begin to speak, I get a 10 to 15 point IQ deduction right off the bat. So to mitigate that, let me tell you a little bit about me. 31 years in this industry and over 20 of them in state government. Started out doing application development, and I just thought, man, these crazy people are paying me to play on the machine. What what a bunch of suckers, you know, and still feel that way to some extent today. Went from that to doing doing DBA work and infrastructure and help desk, literally running around and working on when the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court calls you because his JA, we can't call him secretary, his JA can't do something on her computer, you go personally and go work on that. So I've done frontline desktop support. Have served over 6 years as an agency CIO, ran our state CIO council for 18 months, served as the state's chief operation officer. So we went through data center consolidation, and we bundled up, the equipment from the agencies and put them into 2 of our data centers there. So I had a long and fun career, and we wouldn't change a minute of it. Absolutely love government. What I love about it is our ability to make change in people's life. The toughest part about it is we operate in a world where there is no opportunity for failure. A private industry, you work on something, and the Coke, some new flavor of Coke, and people don't like it. Well, you go back to selling Coke Zero. We don't do our job, and maybe an officer doesn't go home at nighttime. Maybe a judge doesn't have the information to make a decision about where to put a child in a home. And the stuff that we do really makes a difference. So love government, love IT, and I think that the only reason that there is IT within government is for our ability to make the businesses better at their operation. That's the only reason that we kind of do what we do. So that's a little bit about me. Want to find out a little bit about our audience here. How many of the folks in the audience are in government in some shape, form, or fashion? Okay, and how many are on the private side? Okay.
So if you consider higher education, government, UC?
I do. Our legislature does, at least in Florida anyway. So yeah, you get to go through the hoops that we get to go through. And yeah, so I've been through every part of this from, trying to help create a business case for a project to sell to some peanut up above me that it was an important thing to do, right? To the other side of that, to being the peanut, and have somebody having to come into me and say, I know we're doing a bunch of other projects, but boy, this is really important. And so how do we make those decisions about what to do and what not to do? The people in the room, how many folks are involved in IT? Okay, and how many are on the business side of the world? Okay, so this helps me kind of shape, what I think I need to talk about. For the folks in IT, how many are in the actual application or project development or project management as opposed to the infrastructure piece? Or both. So sometimes you get to be the one-man band or one-lady band. I get it. And Alex, not sure. Did you want to do like a cross or?
No, just wanted to share some thoughts, and then I'll kind of
so
prompt you guys with some questions.
I can. I've done.
Yeah,
I've
for
done
sure.
Probably north of I have a 450 presentations. So I like to get up and walk around a little bit. One, let me tell you what a wonderful state you have here. Boy, howdy, we came in. My wife came in, and I came in on Saturday. Have never been to Northern California before, and we have had an opportunity to see. I thought I had seen some agriculture, but driving between here and Yosemite, I've seen agriculture on a scale that I never could have imagined. We got to Yosemite, and I've seen states with some natural resources that are absolutely unbelievable. Am I on?
Yep.
I am. In addition to that, we went down to San Francisco for the first time, and I've seen an area with both a capacity for tourism that is amazing. You're in a great state over here. I have been to most of the other states and had always said that there's no place I'd rather live other than North Florida. No place I even could picture myself living. And one year I made the mistake of going on to a conference in San Diego. And wow. Yeah, so I will tell you, from what we have done here from a walking perspective, I told Alex today, we traveled all over Yosemite, we traveled all over San Francisco. My phone has tried twice to report itself stolen because of the number of steps I'd taken. And there's no way this is the same guy that is holding on to me. So we have enjoyed our travels around the state, and again appreciate the wonderful things that we've seen so far. But moving forward and talking about project management, And do continue to do as you've done so far. Stop and ask questions. Again, there's a ton of experience, and I will tell you, I've seen a lot of things when it comes to projects going well and projects going poorly. We had a $100 million project in the state of Florida called Aspire. We were going to rewrite our finance system. We're fixing to restart that, so they pulled the plug on it. Luckily, there wasn't much cash left in the drain to go out. You know, almost $100 million had been spent by the time they stopped it, and that was, I'm going to say, 4 years ago. So they're about to kick that off again. It's got a new name, Aspire. It's not son of, I'm trying to think what the first thing, but no, it was Aspire before. It's called Palm now. California, I think y'all went through a CGIS application out here, if I remember that. There was a bunch of money spent on that. Not a lot of folks happy with the outcome. FBI spent over $100 million on a new system that they were putting in dealing with criminal history, and a lot of good guys up there. In my history with the state, I've worked with our state court system, our Supreme Court. I worked at our Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and I worked at our Wildlife Commission. So our FBI spent about $100 million on a project, had to wind up tanking it. We get to hear, or the world gets to hear when it comes to state government, about the fact that, boy, howdy, the government just does not do technology well. Well, who do they think we were working with? Because I've never seen a project that we weren't engaged with some of the largest private providers in the world, right, on those projects. It wasn't just state government working on that. I just got through with a project. So here in California, you've got consolidated data centers, right, where the agency's hardware was moved in. Well, in Florida, we had that. We moved them into 2 data centers. And talking about projects being handled to you, first off, this was called No More Bad Projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So how many people came here thinking that this was how you don't get assigned a bad project? There, all right. Well, excellent choice for coming. And that's not what it's about. It's about making good decisions about not choosing a bad project. Sometimes, really, we don't get that choice, though, right? So I had our legislature, we had 2 physical buildings within Tallahassee that housed our data centers. And legislature came up and said, you can no longer pay the people that own this facility over here any money for rent. Well, that building happened to house several different agencies. One of my data centers was in that building. Well, that came out in the budget. And state of Florida, we've got 2 things that are a wonderful thing. One, our legislature only really has to pass 1 bill, and that's our budget. 2, our budget has to be balanced in the state of Florida. There is no borrowing money to operate government in Florida. But once it's written, that is a bill, that is a law that gets signed into. So when they penned that, that meant that I had 120 days to close a data center down and move it across town. Okay, like that. So inside of that, let's just go through what sat in that building. Every entitlement nearly in the state of Florida sat in that building. I had my Department of Children and Families that sat in that building. I had my Agency for Health Care. I had our Department of Highway Safety Motor Vehicles. I had FHP that sat in there, our Department of Juvenile Justice. I can go through things that were all bright lights. These are the kinds of applications that if they go down, you get in the headlines. And I tell people, don't ever be in the newspaper. Only time you're going to be in the newspaper, maybe if you saved a baby from a burning building, and even that's questionable. But those applications being down will put you in the newspaper. We pulled that trick off in 100 days, and we pulled it off under budget. What I tell you is, don't tell me government can't do projects, right? So backing this up, this really isn't about IT, it's about projects in general. And so the question comes up, because it's asking, I spent my time in front of GovOps appropriations, begging for money on one hand, and then explaining problems on the other. That group of folks has the right and the entitlement to ask questions because they're the ones that are writing the check for us, right? And the question always comes up, well, what happened? Why did this go wrong, right? And so when we talk about projects, and well, why is it that projects fail? Because I have been involved in many of them over my time. And it's like me asking a buddy of mine, man, he was going through a divorce. And I said, well, what happened? And he said, it wasn't a thing that happened. He said, over a period of years, there were many things that happened that led us up to a particular catastrophic event. And it's the same way with projects. If you can't, there's not a magic bullet for getting a project done. There may be a magic bullet for determining whether or not you should do a project, right? So my son, him and a couple of his friends headed down to Orlando. God love him, runs out of gas, right? So what his project was to get down to Orlando. What went wrong with this project? Anybody? Yeah, well, yeah, so somebody might say, well, he ran out of gas. And luckily, y'all were looking at this from a little different angle. Well, if you back it up a little bit, him and his friends have been staying up, playing cards all night long, so they missed the alarm. When they missed the alarm, they were late getting on their trip, so they were going to top off the gas tank and didn't. Well, they didn't because they were late getting out of there. And then the guy that was responsible for quote-unquote navigation didn't Google the direction they were headed in. He had it in his head. So they took a wrong turn. And in the end, and this is what the legislature sees, we ran out of gas. Well, what if somebody had been able to come in, me, God forbid he should ask for my opinion about something, but come in ahead of time and say, guys, all right, you're going to Orlando. What time are y'all going to bed tonight? Who's responsible for setting the alarm? Did you top the car off? Because the last time the hurricane came through, I called my kids, come up, they're both at school at FSU. And yeah, there we go, we've got someone on in the group. You know, I've had them top off their car before they came over to the house. I've lived in Florida all my life, and I've been through hurricanes. They have not. But there was some experience in that. And the experience, also based on some of the projects that I'm talking about, I can tell you 100 different ways that projects can go wrong. But looking at their project, would have said, you know, did you top your gas tank off? Have you got good directions? You know, did you put yourself to bed early? It's identifying the little things that I know. Why do I know those things? Well, probably because I ran out of gas at some point in time. I can tell you many different projects. We had a division that came in and said, for IT, how do we decide whether or not, you know, we're actually capable of doing a project, right? I compare us to Jerry Maguire. There's two most famous phrases that have been spoken in movies, been spoken in Jerry Maguire. My wife remembers one of them, and that is,
Show me the money.
well, she remembers you had me at hello. That's what my wife remembers. I remember show me the money. And so from the IT perspective, we live in this supposedly symbiotic, but it's a rather parasitic relationship with the business areas when they come in and say, can you do so and so and so and so? Normally my response was, well, do you have the money for it? So some of the business units, in turn to my response, went out and went to the legislature and came back and said, Merry Christmas. Bam, I got you the money. We got a project. And I was like, oh, crap. Now what do you do, right? Yeah, because that's always been our measurement, from the IT perspective. Do you have the money to do the project? Well, there's a whole lot more going on than whether or not you're ready to take that to do the project. And here's my example. I had somebody from one of the divisions come back and said, oh, we got $100 gajillion. I'm going to tell you what, the more money you get, our most dangerous thing that we work with is money, because that has the attention. It has attention from vendors, it has attention from the legislature. You get to go back and report on it. So he comes back and says, I got the money. I'm like, all right. And we're like the dog chasing the car. Now we've caught it, and what do we do with it? So we start putting together a team, and okay, but you've got to have this project done in a year. Okay, we can do this in a year. You got the money for it. Looks like we're good. All right, I need to engage your people starting tomorrow. Stop. This is our busy season right now. This is the program area telling me, right? Now, these things are particular to Florida. This doesn't happen in California. Some of the examples that I'll go through, I just want you to know that, I understand it too. So he looks me in the eye and tells me, my people are busy right now, and they can't work on this particular project with you for 3 months. And I look at him and say, I won't start the project until you've gone through an RPI process. You got 20 years of process of producing these licenses, And we need to look at how you do it, because when this project is done, I'm going to write it in stone, and it's going to be very expensive to unwrite it. So I want us to go through a rapid process improvement. So that was another 3 months. So my 1-year project turned into a 6-month project. Was that an IT problem? Because trust me, you can ask him today and he will tell you that's an IT project. He went and got the money for it. He had the need for the application to be rewritten. And this was an IT project. And the question came up, well, you know, something, I think somebody asked the question, when does it become an IT project? And I can tell you the answer to that is when it goes wrong. It's 100% an IT project at that point. But had somebody come in before we started this actual project, or God forbid, before we asked the legislature for money for it, and said, is the business unit ready to do the project? We would have uncovered some potential risk in the project. And that was a large risk that we ran into. I've had program areas come to me and say, oh, I have an application that's in the middle of being developed, and I want you to finish it. Where was it being developed at? Well, the University of Florida. Well, let them finish it. Oh, well, the fellow working on it graduated, so he's not there anymore. So I need you to go ahead and wrap this up for me. So, you know, we get projects dumped in our lap in a lot of different ways on the IT side, but back to Alex's point earlier, it's not our project. I mean, this is the business unit's project. We're the facilitator. We're the force multiplier for money. That's all that IT is. You put $1 in us and you get $X out of us in productivity. The cool thing is that based on our efforts, particularly when we're talking about applications, we are able to strategically change the program areas. We can do some tactical stuff with the infrastructure piece of it, but we can strategically change how things are done. So when a project gets assigned to you, we got 2 things. We are going to make a change. We got 2 things that we can do with it. 1, that change can be positive, or 2, it can be extremely detrimental, right? I can give you a ton of different or more explanations of projects that went wrong and that went right also. Every project is going to have a problem at some point in time. The way that I learned what to ask for was by making the mistakes. What I didn't have available to me back then, because literally our measurement from whether or not we were ready was whether or not we had the money, right? What I didn't have then was somebody to come in and look at my part of the organization and say, you know, have you got a PM? Have you got some governance in place, right? And then look at the organizational structure within inside of my agency. Do you have sponsorship at the executive level? Do you have funding from the legislature? Funny things like, well, we got you the money for the project. Maybe it's a 2-year project. And you, all right, well, good. Well, now you're on the radar screen to report, and you look into the proviso, wait a second, this is a 1-year appropriation. Yeah, no guarantee that you're going to get the rest of the money, right? So but we got it for the first year, so everybody's excited to go start working. Well, that might be a risk, you know, when it comes to whether or not that project is shovel ready. So what I didn't have available to me before is a lot of what Alex was talking about, and it was really somebody to kind of come in and look and say, you know, not is IT ready to do a project. For the most part, we take direction. You know, if I could do everything that I was asked to do by the program areas, what a hero that I would be. There was always more demand than there was actual resources to do the projects, right? Particularly if you're doing a good job, even if you're doing a mediocre job. You know, people are willing to put up with a little bit of failure. God forbid you do a good job, because then it's Katie bar the door. They're going to come to you, and you're really not going to have no resources. But to have somebody come in and kind of help say, you can take this project on, but if you do, we've talked with the program area, no, I'm not really on board with this. More than once I've gone to a director and said, I'm going to need 1,000 of your man hours. You can't have it. I can't get the project done. Well, that's an IT project, and that's your problem. Right. So, and it's a combination. It is that is an influence. I talk about it like being a whack-a-mole, you know, and you knock one thing down and something pops up on the other side, and then, you know, you have someone that comes up and says, well, that, you know, this is your #1 project. What about the other two number one projects that you gave me, right? Well, if you could score those out and just say, you know, what Access has been talking about, and what really charged me up enough to come from Florida out here to talk to you about it, and I don't work for Corp, and I'm not paid by them to come out here either, but I believe in someone helping us to explain to the rest of the world that there are 14 key areas that he talked about in trying to figure out whether or not a project was shovel ready. And folks, 2 of them were looking at the IT side of the world. And the rest of it are external influences over things that, you know, we make and push the needle just a little bit, but I promise you this, I couldn't make another director tell his people what to do. You know, I had to escalate up to the agency head, and I did report directly to our agency head. And so when it came to talk, and they did consider IT strategic to the organization. And it is strategic in the ability that we have the ability to make change within the organization once we complete a project. But it's strategic in that, from a governance perspective, we should never decide which projects that we're going to do, right? The agency should be telling us that because we're limited resource pot. But what if we could help them make a better decision by saying, it's all about probability of success. This particular project, while it may be a priority 2, somebody was asking about priorities earlier, but it may be a priority 2 for you, and this one is a priority 1, it looks like there's a 20% chance that one's going to succeed, and maybe we can change priorities. So it just helps them from the decision-making process. When somebody's selling to me, and it's all selling on the inside, most of it is about, you know, I asked the question, what's our chances of success? Many times when it came to the projects that were funded, you know what I was asked by executive leadership? Is the money going to be spent? Scary to know how some of the decisions were made, whether or not we're in good shape. Because if we were in bad shape, the answer was, regardless of whether or not we were going to complete it and have the customer what they actually wanted, but the money was going to be spent. Well, good. You know, why? Because we're in another budget cycle. So we're going around, we're asking for more money, and I see heads nodding in the back. And I get it, because I was in the same situation. I had, you know, I'm trying to propel our LBRs, and I'm telling our staff, I need you to bring your budget request to me. And by the way, you need to show me where these projects are finished. Sometimes I didn't ask to what extent they were finished, right? You know, how happy people were with the product. The key to that is getting me out of the situation of having to defend projects before I go ask for them. So if you could come into me and say, before you go across the street and ask for the money, here are the projects that look good and here are the ones that look bad. Now it's on me, right? If I go ahead and move forward with that decision. But coming up afterwards, and this is where we live in IT a lot of times, is you go into the project, you haven't done the analysis, well, you pull back the sheets and you go, holy smoke, I didn't know that was going on underneath the covers, and this is now, we're in a jam. Now it's hurry up and get it done, try to make it look nice, get as much of it up underneath the carpet, put the cat litter over the rest of it, and so this is just trying to identify where the problems are at before you get to them, because I know how to identify them afterwards. And I'm tired of postmortems, by the way. I'd rather say, let's just go crack a cold one because we did a good job.
Hey, Kevin, can I interrupt you? Can we get Dave, great points. I don't mean to stop you. I just want to give Dave a chance to throw some things in. Thank you.
I'll sit. Great job, Kevin. Well, I was at the State Lands Commission for most of my state career, 37 years. And I evolved from a budget analyst to a fiscal officer to a chief administrative officer, chief financial officer, CIO, all at the same time, and eventually assistant executive officer. There was a question earlier about how all those roles work together. And when you're fulfilling all 3 roles of CAO, CFO, and CIO, it's pretty easy. You take care of it in the shower in the morning. So, but one of the challenges that we have and continue to have are competing projects. I worked at the State Lands Commission, which had 3 pretty much separate mandates. We had a development of oil and gas, managing state lands, and an oil spill program. And it was like having 3 departments reporting to you as a single entity. They all had different projects, they all had competing initiatives and stuff. And one thing, how many of you have like an information technology board at work? Okay. We have one. All the division chiefs participate, and if you want a project, you have to bring it there. Now, one of the advantages I see in this project is this would give us an objective means of looking at those competing projects. You only have so much bandwidth in your IT department. We only have so much bandwidth in your budget, and all of you that in state government know resources, people in particular, are really hard to come by. And if you're very lucky, you might get a budget appropriation, but that hadn't happened too much under Jerry. So now it's a matter of how do you allocate the resources that you have. How many of you are in love with the PAL process? Nobody, huh? Well, I see the PAL process as something very good because it is forcing the agencies, IT departments in particular, to engage with the business and forcing the business to have a role in the whole IT project development. Before, we were all in that same situation where they would come to IT and say, here, this is what I want to do. I mean, I've been in the same place Kevin has been with trying to go to the business. Well, this is our busy season. We don't have anybody. I even went at one point and got positions to replace those people that I needed as SMEs.
Oh, wow.
And they got reallocated. Okay. They just got absorbed, and when we went to them, everybody was still busy. So it's very difficult, and I wish I had a tool like this that would have been something I could have taken to upper management at the time and said, you know, we really can't do this. We need the cooperation of business. And through this evaluation, we're ready on this side. They're not. They don't have their processes documented. They don't have the resources to allocate to putting the project together. And if you don't have those things lined up, you failed before you even started. So as cumbersome as the PAL process is, I think it's kind of taking things in the right direction. What it is lacking is this kind of a metric tool. I mean, it's asking the questions, but it's really not nailing it down. And there's still a lot of subjectivity involved. Yes?
After a project has been funded, what have been the most persuasive ways that a PM has persuaded you to either suspend or kill a project? Like after it's already even been funded? Like maybe using some of the domains.
That doesn't happen very often because they didn't get that far. And one of the failures that we had in the past was not having the formal project management office. I was in a very small organization. It's 250 people in the entire organization. We had a 7-person IT shop. It's expanded since then. Now we contract for project management services from Resources Agency. We've expanded the number of positions there. And we went through this whole data center consolidation. Prior to that, we were keeping the lights on. That's all we can do. And we have just recently transitioned to the point where we can actually address some of the business problems. You know, there have just been too scarce resources within the state. I mean, we went through the dot-com bubble. You know, we lost all the positions in the 2000s. We lost a third of our agency in the 80s, 1/3 of it. And it hasn't been replaced since. 150 general fund positions. So anyway, it's been kind of a competing resources.
It'd be very hard to sell me it's a shame to say this, but it'd be very hard to sell me a kill the project, but I would pitch that as let's redefine success for this project, right? And so in the beginning, the project was probably supposed to do 14 different bells and whistles, and if you could come in and say, the best we're going to be able to get out of this is 4 bells and whistles. How do we paint this as a success? That's probably what I would focus on.
That's a good point. I did have a project, and it was initiated internally, redirecting resources, and it was as a result of a legislative audit. And they found fault in our bookkeeping, our lease receipts. They said we were millions. We had let millions of lease payments go. We really hadn't, but there was an urgency to fix that system. I had been waiting around for fiscal or one of its iterations, because if you remember, we were under direct orders not to develop accounting systems because this was coming. Well, it's been coming since the mid-90s, and I don't know if it's going to get here or not. I thought it would be here before I retired, but I think I got lucky and it wasn't. In any event, we did adopt a system. Now, this system took care of the billing. That was my number one priority. But the system plans were also to do workload processing for the business unit. We couldn't engage the business unit. The business unit was not ready. So we cut our losses. It does the accounting great. We don't have the issues that we had in the past. And we're still waiting. I mean, the software is there. We're still waiting on the business group to document their processes and engage. So, like you said, it's a partial success. You redefine what's going to be a success. And I address the primary things within the legislative audit.
Yeah, pitch me the success and then find somebody from the business unit that agrees with you so that myself and the director would be in agreement that this is all that we can get done. And then that way you don't have somebody saying, well, I fudged it.
So we're a little bit over on time, and I want to ask one more question from somebody, and then we can stick around afterwards. But is there any last question somebody wants to throw up? No?
Lunch is a great motivator.
I know. Well, I appreciate your patience, and there's a lot of data to intake, and it's a long session. So I thank you for participating and kind of giving some feedback and listening and being in the room, and I'm around the rest of the day. These guys are around the rest of the day, so happy to answer any additional questions, and we appreciate your patience
Keep doing the
and
good
your
work
focus.
you're doing for California. I've learned a lot since I've been here already.
Great,
Yeah.
thanks.